Hello there, Harvey Braden III with Harvey Roofing and Construction here. We're approaching March and the time of year to where we tend to see severe weather here in North Texas. And our industry, the storm restoration roofing industry as a whole, has a lot of industry events that happen in January and February. I've been attending a lot of those just to revisit knowledge, learn about new products, and continuing education. And it's always a great opportunity to find out some of the latest occurrences that are happening across the insurance world. We get to hear from a lot of attorneys, public adjusters, professionals outside of just the contracting realm, and it's always very good learning experience. So I wanted to touch on a very complicated subject that kind of covers all aspects of property casualty insurance, and it's highly complicated. I'm gonna try to boil it down into a nutshell and share it with you in the shortest time possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the reality that we face with any kind of insurance in North Texas specifically, is that we do face things that happen, hailstorms. Texas, even with the Gulf Coast, we get the hurricanes at the Gulf Coast, but tornadoes, hailstorms, high winds, various things that can cause property damage. And when those things happen, we rely on our insurance to be able to restore our property back to before it was damaged. And we pay a lot of money in premiums to be able to have that protection. The one that stands out to me is State Farm. State Farm spends almost $1 billion a year in advertising to tell us that we can trust them, that they're on our side. There's a lot of various marketing that all of the insurance companies do to convince and reinforce that they're there for us in times of need. And that it's important. And but the one thing that you need to consider just right off the bat is that all the money spent on advertising to tell us all these various jingles come from our premiums. So it's kind of an interesting relationship right off the bat. And they do a good job at it. I've got a quick video here of a guy that did a good job of the jingles that are out there. I'm going to play those real quick.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is nationwide, is on your American family insurance. We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
So obviously they do a constant barrage of telling us that they're on our side, that we can trust them. And, you know, it's a necessary evil. We have to have policies to protect our property. But when things do happen and we actually experience some sort of a loss, whatever kind of damage it might be, they also do a good job of giving the impression that the first thing we should do is contact them to begin the claims process. And that is true. You are ultimately going to need to file a claim if you have a reason that your policy should or might cover, if you believe that you've had damage of some sort that created a loss for you that's covered. But there's a lot of pieces that happen from that point forward that a lot of policyholders don't understand. So I want to cover those one by one. And the first is choosing an insurance company. And choosing the insurance company is extremely difficult. Premiums are constantly going up. People, more often than not now, are getting coverage in policies that they don't completely understand the coverages that it gives them. And I'll touch on one of those in a minute as far as one of the major pitfalls that we keep running into. But there are companies that are better than others. I don't necessarily have any that I could tell you are the best, but I did find a site that had what they list as being the top 10. I agree with some of it I don't. And then they also have their 4 lowest rated, so the worst that they are identifying. This is all based off consumer satisfaction. But all insurance companies are in business to make profits, and that's their number one objective. They are out to grow their bottom lines. They invest the money that we pay them. First, they spend money to advertise to us, to tell us that they're trustworthy and we can count on them. Then they invest the rest of the money, and we have some extremely large public companies that are traded on the stock market now. 100% their objective is profits. There are some companies that I would say have much more policyholder friendly viewpoints, but for the most part, what I'm about to explain will tell you why each of these companies continue to fall into the trap of having their profit motives being their number one objective. So you pay your insurance premiums. It covers you with a policy that says what everything that's covered. And then there's a point in time that you potentially need to file an insurance claim. The industry, insurance companies have turned to what's called a third-party administrator. By and large, if you ever file a claim, the phone number that you dial, the person you're going to have visit your property, to the adjuster that's going to come look at the damage, things like that. More and more, they don't work for the insurance company. They work for a third-party administrator. The third-party administrator is a company that is hired by an insurance carrier, an insurance company, and they outsource. They basically manage all components of the claims process. Well, to get the business of these huge insurance companies, these third-party administrators, their job is to show the insurance company that we can save you money. And they do that in various ways by being efficient and responding to claims. But they also have a growing perspective of being able to help delay and deny claims in hopes that they'll never be paid out. So the largest third-party administrator in the country right now is Sedgwick Claims Management Services. There's quite a few of these. They're all big companies, and they service the large majority of insurance companies, insurance carriers utilize these companies to manage their claims process. So these companies have become very good at learning they have become good at teaching insurance companies processes that they can do to help them bolster their profits. And as that's taken hold over the last, I'm going to say, decade, that has continually led to the erosion of insurance companies being focused on doing right by their policyholders. And sometimes these insurance companies don't even know what's occurring because they completely outsource everything to a third-party administrator. And the third-party administrator is trying to show them these results of how well they're serving them and how they're protecting the insurance company's profits. And Sedgwick is huge, and I'm just going to use them as an example. They'll go in, and as a consultant, they will actually teach these insurance companies, and I believe that this is what's spreading this trend of insurance companies being less straightforward and less policyholder service oriented, is because of this trend. So the third-party administrator handles all aspects of your claim. When you call, which you've been trained to do, trust us, call us, let us know you think you have damage, and we'll take it from there. Well, behind this process, these companies, insurance companies and third-party administrators, have massive teams of people, lawyers, specialists and experts in various things that are first off looking for any reason that they can deny a claim. And that's not all companies. It doesn't happen all the time, but that is a trend that is becoming a plague on property casualty insurance. So that's the first thing that a policyholder encounters. You truly have a loss, you file a claim, and you have this massive team of people that all go to work to figure out if they can reduce their exposure to paying you money to fix what you're owed. Then you have the next step, is that you, as a policyholder, you don't have anybody on your team. Less than 5% of policyholders end up with any kind of representation. You may or may not already have a contractor that you've been dealing with, but you don't have anyone involved that's really helping you navigate what's in your best interest. And the insurance companies know this. They know that less than 1% of the time is an attorney ever going to get involved. So they can really take a very aggressive approach of taking advantage of people. And a lot of people don't know whether they've been taken advantage of or not. And they, in the end, that's the reality. Insurance companies know it. They know that you will have very limited insight as to what's been done right or wrong, and a lot of claims that are denied, they just go away, and the insurance company never pays out any money. So that is the dynamic that's set up from day one. You've all, we were told about the trust us, something happens, call us, then leave it to us. And that is a real problem with the dynamic that's being played out, especially with the greed that's in the huge companies and industries these days. So going beyond that, these companies insurance companies as a whole have also taken a couple other steps to really, I feel like it's taking advantage of policyholders. And what they're doing is they're changing the policy types, and you're buying a policy on your homeowner's insurance that you don't really know what it covers. And the agents and people buying policies online these days don't have a clear understanding of what they're purchasing. So the first step that was taken was to start paying claims out in two parts. There was a day and age decades ago that if you had an insurance claim, they told you how much they owed you, they cut you a check, that was it. Now what they've done is they've actually it's become an industry norm to pay you two parts. One is say, okay, this is your damaged item, your damaged roof, your damaged anything that they owe you for is worth X dollars based on how old it was. And they cut you that check. And they go, here you go. We paid you what your depreciated amount was on that. And then they say, but you also have this second coverage, and if you replace or repair that item, then after you're done and you can prove it to us, we'll pay you the remaining amount, which recovers the depreciation. And so they started that because it allows them to further delay paying out portions of that money. And the problem that we've run into now, especially in North Texas, is that these companies are creating insurance policies that do not have recoverable depreciation. So people are buying policies. They think the cheaper premium sounds good. No one ever explains it to them. And all they have is actual cash value. So the damage is going to be paid, depreciated, reduced by the age or the wear and tear of whatever was damaged. And so I'm going to use a roof example. Obviously, that's our expertise. And a roof might be $10,000, but it's 15 years old. So they're going to take that and say, okay, it's served half its life. We're going to pay you $5,000. Then we're going to subtract your deductible. Deductibles are another good point too. So whatever's left, we're going to cut you that check and you're on your own. A lot of people are starting to sign up for those policies and they have no idea that they did it. They have an actual damage occurred. Then they find out that I'm not getting enough money to repair my property. And that's happening with more and more policies. Some policies particularly cover the roof that way. They may say the roof is only actual cash value and other items would be replacement value. So that's a terrible thing that the insurance company is doing to people that are buying policies and have no idea that they have that lack of coverage. Deductibles is another part of that we've seen happen over the last decade, maybe 20 years. Insurance companies have continually raised the deductible to offset when they do have claims. And that in large part does play into hailstorms and roofing claims because they are able to reduce what they owe by the deductible amount. So in a bygone era, that was $500 flat amount, $1,000 flat amount. It's now gone to percentage deductibles. So they have managed to try to deter people filing claims by having, I've seen 3% of the home's value as a deductible. So 1, 2, and 3% has become a norm, or a flat amount that could be as high as $5,000. So the first thing that happens when you have a damage claim, they immediately have you locked into an agreement that that first portion of that amount is going to be at your own responsibility, which for a lot of people, that can be a real hardship. Then we jump into the fact that some homeowners are actually having damage and finding out that it doesn't even cover to repair to a brand new state. It only is going to pay the actual cash value portion. So those are two huge ways that the burden has been shifted to policyholders by insurance companies. It's one of those things to where if you understand what you have in your policy and you know what coverage you have, then it's obviously easier to stomach. But if you were to find out that you did not have replacement coverage and you only had the actual cash value, you're only going to get half the money you need to do repairs. I don't really think that very many people would buy that kind of coverage if they were fully aware of it. So be careful when you're dealing with insurance agents, that some of them don't know what they're selling, and then some just fail to disclose it. And if you're buying online, it's definitely something you've got to read into carefully, because once you sign everything, that's it. There's no one going to come pay a phone call and say, hey, by the way, we want to make sure you understand what you just bought in your coverage. So that's something that they've shifted the burden to the policyholder. Then beyond that, there's the governmental component. So touched on the third-party administrators and how they have made their way into being a big arm of the insurance industry, and how they are advocating to reduce claims payments. But on the governmental side, there's also a huge effort and lobby from insurance companies that they pursue affecting laws, actual state laws. In Texas, we've had some pretty dramatic things happen over the last decade. And one of those, or the starting point of that, was shifting policy types to where they could be actual cash value only. The Texas Department of Insurance actually reviews this stuff, and they could have disallowed that trend, but they didn't. And so now that having actual cash value only for property insurance is become a norm, and that was through the Texas Department of Insurance allowing that to happen. The next step was insurance companies knew that homeowners don't have anybody to advocate for them other than typically their contractor. So the contractor that you hire or that you speak with was usually your only resource to tell you what you thought the contractor thought about their situation and whether the insurance company was serving them well or not. So the insurance companies didn't like that, and they went and had legislation, a law that took effect, I believe it was back in 2013, and said no longer can a contractor deal with an insurance company on behalf of a property owner, any kind of property owner. Now we're creating a necessity that you have to be a public adjuster. So you need to be state licensed to be an adjuster that serves policyholders. And it's illegal for a contractor to talk to an insurance company or advocate for a policyholder to deal with an insurance company. So that was a pretty big wedge, because majority of homeowners or policyholders, period, commercial and residential, had relied on their contractors heavily to make sure that their insurance component during a claim, that they were treated fairly. So they, through changes in law, were able to more or less remove that asset to a policyholder and make it so that the contractor really can't be involved in that process dealing with a claim with an insurance company. And it created a new industry per se with the public adjuster realm. So there is a powerful tool within public adjusters to serve policyholders, and I'll touch on that in a minute as well. But that was the first step in governmental that really made a big shift in the state of Texas. They went further insurance companies and the third-party administrators that I really just think they're getting started with how aggressive they are with trying to protect their profits. But the next step was they convinced enough people to pass a law in 2019, and it took effect September 1st, 2019, that made it illegal, clearly illegal and a crime, to not pay your deductible that's part of your policy in conjunction with a claim. So what that means is up until from the late 80s until current, that was kind of vague. It's always been, I would say, unethical. People that had repairs completed with insurance proceeds and they didn't pay their deductible out of pocket towards the whole project was in essence insurance fraud, if you look at it in the big scheme of things. But it's happened in Texas for a long time, and people were having their deductibles, they weren't paying their deductibles. The money that was being received from insurance was being utilized, and a contractor was agreeing to perform all of the necessary repairs for the money that insurance paid. So the insurance lobby won that one. I don't think that waiving deductibles or doing what has been done was ever a good idea by any stretch of the imagination. But the insurance companies have won another battle, which basically says if you have a claim and it is recoverable depreciation, meaning that they're holding back money. They send you that first check. Here's what your stuff was worth at the age it is. And then when you get it back to new, we'll pay you the rest. They now have the right to hold on to that money until you prove that you have paid your part. So your deductible portion, your $1,000 or your 1%, 2%, or 3% of your property value deductible, they have the right to actually require you to show proof that you have paid that. A credit card statement, a canceled check, an actual payment plan that's being paid out to the contractor in an installment agreement. So they can hold that money until they get that proof. So it gave them another way to delay payment and in essence, get into the business of the policyholder so that they're, unrepresented for what the property owner, not having as little persons advocating on their behalf and all the hoops to jump through to ultimately receive what's due to them. So that's a big chunk of what has occurred over the last decade that has become pretty, made it more and more difficult for a policyholder to be treated fairly in a legitimate claim. And going forward, we're in a situation that we have to, as a contractor, we've got to be able to navigate and help our clients navigate this process so that they are well taken care of, and what's owed to them is achieved. And it's just a lot more complicated, and it makes it very difficult for policyholders to understand. It shouldn't be this difficult and this complicated, but it is. And your contractor is your first point of contact that hopefully is going to give you all of these considerations and help you somewhat determine a plan of action. So one of the first things that is powerful with the new laws that give you resources, or should I say what is available to a policyholder, a property owner, to pursue if they don't believe, or they're just trying to make sure that they get proper and fair treatment for what's owed to them in an insurance policy, is the public adjusting realm. So the new law that took effect back in 2013 has in essence created an industry of professionals that go out, and their job is to take on clients that are policyholders and represent them to the insurance company. And they have a lot of tools, and it is a great option that it's not always needed. I'm not bashing insurance companies. We as a contractor come across claim settlements that cover everything, and all the details are proper and everything is done fine without any other intervention, that's becoming the rare. I wouldn't say, it's as common to run into a policyholder having a pitfall or not being treated fairly as much as it is to have something that is just on the up and up, a claim that went through and everything was completely fair. I would say it's a split 50 anymore. So, but your public adjuster is a state licensed professional that's capable of advocating, communicating, and representing for you and to the insurance company. So that is a tool that we have. We also have the Texas Department of Insurance. If there is a circumstance that that an insurance company is actually committing some sort of fraud, there is a way to make to actually report it to the Texas Department of Insurance. I think that the public adjusters and lawyers are probably the best tools that any policyholder has to ensure that you are paid what you're owed when you have a legitimate loss. But one thing that you have to consider is that every time there's a claim, there is lawyers, experts, every professional imaginable on the team of the insurance company, and they are looking for every way they can to reduce claims payments. So, that's something that you've got to consider anytime you file a claim and you're working towards being paid what you're owed according to your policy. So the last thing I want to touch on is this big change in Texas, which I mentioned before, of not waiving deductibles. Texas Department of Insurance is just getting this started because they are responsible for enforcing the law that just took effect. And they have, basically, it's illegal for a contractor to help avoid paying a deductible. There are now criminal charges, up to $2,000 fine and 6 months in jail if a contractor engages in that type of activity. You have to consider the fact that if a contractor is offering to do something that's illegal, I would think it's a red flag and a bell that goes off that says maybe they're not the right people for me to trust with my project. So that is a big deal going forward. And I'm sure there's going to be more and more information that comes out just because that law is so new, less than 6 months old, and there'll be more and more information. So as we're in March, this is the typical time of year where we do tend to see some of the most severe weather in North Texas. I hope just giving that overview related to your relationship with the insurance company that you have, and maybe even the motivation to revisit the policy that you have for the coverage that's actually offered to you in that policy. And then just some of the things that are involved in the big picture on how big of a deal it really is that you're asking an insurance company that you pay your money to, that you're asking them to do right by you, to decide how and what they're going to pay you when they have such major considerations on preserving their profits and having and they spend so much effort in finding ways to trip up the process and to leave you all alone in just accepting what they say. So it's a very odd relationship that we have with our insurance companies that we buy policies from, and something that needs to have very deep consideration. And hopefully, if you ever are left with if you're left with the situation of having damage to your property, whatever it is, if it's auto, if it's home, any kind of property casualty, that you'll kind of take the approach that you need to take a second and gear your thinking towards you are your best advocate, and you have to be able to navigate and not just think that Big Brother insurance company is going to do right by you 100% of the time, because there's definitely a lot of things at play that don't have your best interest as a policyholder at heart. So I hope that for those that hung in there with me, that is beneficial to your knowledge. And if you're currently going through that situation where you have a claim that you've made and you were denied, or you don't feel like the insurance company has done you properly, maybe this will give you a little more of a way to regroup in finding a new way to go approach it differently. And we're always happy to help here at Harvey Roofing and Construction. Our knowledge is free, and anything that we can ever assist somebody with getting themselves back to better than new is what we want to do. And our knowledge is something that we take pride in and constantly try to stay at the cutting edge of what's going on in the industry as a whole and how we can best help our clients. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.